This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right, let's talk about my bold predictions for this week versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have a few, but the first thing I'm going to start with is Jerome Ford. I think Jerome Ford's been coming into his own over the last few weeks. I think if you look at the Seattle game, he played well. You look at this game, he played well. I think he was good in parts of that Arizona game. And I think what he is finding out is the game is slowing down for him a bit, right? He's able to find some of these creases that he was overlooking. He's just finding his rhythm in this run game. And I think another part of it is better execution on the back end by the offensive lineman in this run game. I think we've pointed it out for weeks that the run game was really being hindered by some sloppiness on the offensive line and the fact that they were having a hard time adjusting to not having Nick Chubb because they're trying to run the Nick Chubb plays without Nick Chubb. Now they've done a good job of mixing it up, having different run looks, inside zone here and there, some pitch sweeps. They're getting real creative with how they get the ball into the hands of their running backs. And they have a nice set rotation down of how they'll use these running backs. And Jerome Ford, I feel like he has the most potential out of all of them because he has that same explosive ability that Pierre Strong has, but he has better contact balance and he's a better pass blocker and a better receiver out the backfield. So I expect Jerome Ford to be over 100 total yards. I think he might be over 100 rushing yards again. Pittsburgh just doesn't have the strongest run defense for whatever reason this year. I think they're bottom 5 in the NFL in yards, rushing yards allowed per game. They tend to give up the big run, right? I think that's the big thing with the Steelers. They might stop you for a lot of stops, but they'll give up a big one. And I think Jerome Ford has a tendency to hit the big one. And he has the vision and the contact balance to be able to get those consistently. Also, Kareem Hunt always plays well versus the Pittsburgh, especially when they're in Cleveland. I expect that trend to continue. Kareem Hunt just waste no time up the middle. And that's really where you need to attack Pittsburgh, right? Here is the downside to Pittsburgh's plan of trying to disguise all these schemes and confuse a quarterback, right? Because a lot of times we bring up that game plan as if it has no downsides, as if, oh yeah, it's always good to disguise your schemes and hide things. And yes, while it's important to show different pictures and manipulate your coverages so you're not just being super obvious, it's always good. There are downsides to trying to confuse a quarterback at the line of scrimmage by, sending double mug and all of this stuff at a quarterback to try to confuse them, right? And the downside is you might be worse at run stopping because what you're going to be doing is moving a lot of guys out of position so you can show one look, starting to play out of position and then having them backpedal to get into a zone. And if you have to backpedal to get into the zone, it makes it real easy for the Browns to get to the second level and pull these runs up the middle. I think the same reason the Browns will had success running the ball versus Baltimore going to be the same reason they're going to have success running the ball versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, because again, they're going to try to disguise these blitzes. They're going to try to confuse DTR, but they're also going to be out of position naturally by trying to create that confusion. And when you get them out of position, it's easier to push them back off the line of scrimmage. It becomes less about physicality, more about finesse. And if you take your foot off the gas with physicality versus this Browns team, I believe they'll be able to push you back pretty well in this game. A lot of this is going to be about the Browns' ability to get 4 or 5 yards on first down, right? Can this team stay ahead of the sticks? Can they play a clean football game? And by a clean football game, I don't just mean don't turn the ball over, right? That's a given. You don't ever want to turn the ball over. If you could have a season with 0 turnovers, you would take it. But it's not just about the turnovers. It's also about the penalties. One of the most overlooked things about football games and drives when it comes to discussing them in context, right? Because this gets lost in the stat sheet, and this gets lost when you're only kind of skimming over highlights to really review a game, is the sacks and penalties. what gets you behind the sticks? You have to do a good job of avoiding sacks and avoiding penalties. Avoid those things that get you behind the sticks, because DTR, if he's under 20 yards, I think you can use him really well. I think there's a lot you can do with him. The problem with DTR is that once you get above 20 yards on those 20-yard throws, he's just never been good at it. He threw 35% in college. In the preseason, he was around 31%, even when he was playing well, even when he wasn't necessarily playing against starters on defense. He's never been a deep throw kind of guy. That's just not his game. And that's okay. You can get away with that. I mean, Jacoby Brissett was never really a deep throw kind of guy in the NFL either, and you got away with him for about half a season here in Cleveland. So that's not required, and that's the good news, right? It's not required that he throw the ball deep, but you can make it required on yourself if you start getting pushed behind the sticks, if you start getting penalties, taking sacks, all of these things. If you start doing them, then all of the sudden you're behind the sticks and you're asking DTR to rip 30-yard chunk plays, and that's just not his game. That's never been his game, and that never will be his game. He's just limited from an arm strength perspective on those kind of throws, which is fine. Again, you're not asking him to do that. You want to limit the mistakes there, limit the sacks, limit any reason to get him behind the sticks, because that's where he does not excel at. Right? He does not excel there. He's not been good at it. So that's the difference between having him or Deshaun Watson. He's not a deep ball thrower. So you want to avoid those spots, stay ahead of the sticks, get a couple yards on first down. If your run game is moving well, I think your passing game will follow, right? If you're able to stay ahead of the sticks with your run game or on early downs, and then you're only asking DTR to throw on second and third and four, I think he'll look great in those spots, or not great, but he'll look fine in those spots, because that's where he can excel. But if you keep getting pushed behind the sticks and you're asking him to throw go balls on 3rd and 18, that's not his game, right? That's Deshaun Watson's game. DTR's game is let's get as close to the first down marker as possible. Let's keep this ahead of the sticks. Let's run the ball, and let's have an average depth of target of, what did Jacoby Brissett have last year? Average depth of target of like 7. Yeah, I would say that's about what you want. You probably want an average depth of target about 7. Or average yards per target about 7. You know what I mean? Like, that's probably where you want to be with DTR. And I think if you are in that spot, he'll have a good enough completion percentage. You'll be able to move the ball. You'll be able to get to these first downs. The goal with DTR this weekend is just to survive. Make sure that you don't do anything to ruin yourself, or you don't have a disastrous outing, or you don't go out here trying to do too much. Just try to do enough, be a part of it, get from a passing perspective. We just were holding on to the ball. We were out of rhythm. We weren't on time. We were trying to do too much at the quarterback position that week, and that led to turnovers, sacks, penalties, right? All 3 of those things happened last time you played Pittsburgh, and the only reason Pittsburgh beat you: turnover, sacks, penalties. I know this sounds crazy to some, because it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I truly believe that the Cleveland Browns are the better football team in almost every way that counts. Quarterback might be a toss-up. I don't know if DTR is better than Kenny Pickett, but I don't think Kenny Pickett's good enough to where that conversation even matters. I think at receiver, you're all right. You can match up with them with your corners. I think on the defensive line, you can match up with them for sure with your defensive line. Your linebackers are really good. I like them against your running backs and your short area throw game. I love our safeties against their tight ends. I love the matchups that the Cleveland Browns defense has. And if you look at it offensively, I like DeJuan Jones in his matchup versus TJ Watt. I don't think he's going to shut him down, but I think he's going to do enough to be able to get this ball out quickly. I like Amari Cooper and some of the matchups you can have him on in this game, especially somebody like a Patrick Peterson. I think that you can get something out of that, and especially how much that the Steelers like to run base. David Njoku, somebody who I think might have a good game in this one. So I like our matchups. I think if you come out here, you have low penalties, low turnovers, and low sack numbers, you'll do enough to win this game, because you should win the game because you are a better football team. You're playing at home. That's my bold prediction overall for the week. I would say also David Njoku, I really do think that they're going to target him a lot. I was talking to Steelers DB, and he kind of agreed with me on this. And he actually brought it up, and I agree with him. But David Njoku, I do think he's going to have a big game. The Steelers are out 2 tight ends. Steelers also like to be in base a lot. So I think the Browns are going to try to do a lot to force them into that base personnel. So I wouldn't be surprised that this week we see a return of a lot of 12 and 13 personnel to kind of force Pittsburgh to put their base personnel packages out there, because that means you can force Alex Highsmith into coverage, which means 2 pluses. He's in coverage, plus he's not rushing if he's in coverage, right? You want to force the Steelers to take away their own pass rush. The best way you can do that is to force them out of their, nickel and dime sets and get them into their base sets, where they'll have more issues covering the middle of the field. And David Njoku, especially with screens, they won't have the speed out there to go sideline to sideline. So that's kind of the game plan. I think offensively, I think it's going to be a more grinded out, heavy personnel package type of day. Wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of Nick Harris in this one, a lot of Kareem Hunt, and a lot of Jerome Ford. For DTR, it's just about managing the game, not turning the ball over, trying not to get yourself put behind the sticks, doing whatever you can to just stay ahead of the sticks, keep accumulating first downs and accumulate points, whether they're 3 or 7. You just want to get in the scoring range and accumulate points, and I think the defense will take care of the rest for you. I think that's the recipe for victory. If you look at the defensive side of this matchup, I don't think that the Steelers really pose that many problems for them. We know that Pittsburgh likes to go to these man beaters. They run a really nice pick play that's not a pick play. It's a legal pick play with Allen Robinson, where he stunts in the middle. Well, not stunts, but stops in the middle of the field, basically as if he's setting up for a curl that pauses one guy, and then you can run Jalen. You can run your backup running back underneath that, and it's basically extended handoff. They did it to us for about 40 yards, and I think every week since, a team has tried that on the Cleveland Browns, and it's had pretty good success against this defense, right? It's a lot of what I'm talking about. One of the things I point out in my film breakdowns with this defense is, hey, you get in these kind of pick and roll situations, and the Browns haven't had a great plan on what to do in those pick and roll situations. You got to find a way to avoid it, find a way to communicate, find a way to avoid getting yourself in that log jam, because you know that they're going to run a lot of those. This is a Steelers team that loves mesh, right? They love those man beater concepts, and you're going to be in a ton of man. But I think that this game plan is going to require Kenny Pickett to be a above average deep ball thrower. He has not showed himself to be somebody who does well in the middle of the field or throwing the ball deep. I think you're going to get more than your fair share of misses from him, even if guys are open. And I think if you continue to get pressure, put pressure on Kenny Pickett, put pressure on that offensive line, put pressure on that run game, you can slow them down pretty well. Pat Freiermuth is back for them, and that is important for them. But I think that Grant Delpit has done some of the finest work in the NFL against tight ends this year. I expect that to continue against Freiermuth. And the Browns are just going to be aggressive. They're going to try to push them back behind the sticks, force Kenny Pickett to throw the ball deep down the field, and they'll take their chances with that. And I think Pittsburgh's going to try to do that as well. But I think the Browns are going to have better success avoiding being in that situation because their run game's a little better, and the Steelers' run defense is a little worse than the Cleveland Browns. So, and this is a home game for the Browns here. So that's my thoughts about this game. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.